Horror Convos, come on in, have a seat, stay a while, take a load off, vibe into the beat. We can just chill, have a drink, say what's on our mind. Never know what you're thinking, hey, it could be neat. Fear is everywhere, in your mind, on the street, in the earth, in the stars. Scary things you left for free. What you gotta say about it? Having fun, you and me. If you got nowhere to go, no place to be, just relax, have a chat, but don't think it's therapy. If you get too afraid, there's a door you can leave tonight and be well. Maybe talk again. We'll see. One night and be well. Maybe talk again. We'll see. You can night be well. Maybe talk again. We'll see.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Horror Convos, a casual, relaxing, and occasionally funny podcast where we choose one horror topic per episode and discuss anything related to it that we want. Movies, TV, novels, comics, video games, radio dramas, personal experiences, nothing is off limits here. We share our opinions and compare examples that portray the subject from the good to the bad and the... New episodes release every other Wednesday. Horror Convos is available to listen on YouTube, Spreaker, and Spotify. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and come hang out at the Horror Convos Facebook page to share your thoughts and leave suggestions on how we can improve the show. If you want to listen to the podcast without commercial interruptions, you can go to patreon.com/horrorconvos. Tier 1 membership gets you full episodes ad-free, as well as exclusive content like outtakes that didn't make it into the podcast. Tier 2 membership gets you access to vote on what we discuss in special event episodes. We appreciate everyone who donates to help our little podcast grow. That's patreon.com/horrorconvos. If you'd like to be a guest on the show and have a subject in horror you're passionate about, you can send an email to keithhorrorconvos@yahoo.com, all one word, all lowercase. I can't realistically have everyone on, but will review every email I can. And in the meantime, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when our newest content is uploaded. I'm your host, Keith Harris. Apologies once again for last week's lack of an episode. For those of you who didn't tune in to the update last Wednesday, a brief recap for you. We had 2 episodes scheduled to record, one of which was planned as a follow-up to episode 32, where I reacted to a few iconic horror trailers. I then promised at the end of that episode that one of those movies whose trailer I reviewed would be a subject in the next podcast. Apart from that, I had a new guest scheduled to come on in a future show. So what basically happened was that we had just perfectly bad timing where everyone had something come up after we'd made plans to record. I had everything in place, but sometimes, as I've said in the past,
Shit happens.
in all seriousness, it was nobody's fault. If it was anybody's, it's mine. I just didn't have anything already recorded for that week. I was setting up for those guests. I will try to have something made for backup content in the event that what I'm planning falls through again. For this week, until my next guest feels better and we get together ideally to do the podcast we planned, and the following Monday. Well, no. With this episode coming out now, we'll get back on schedule with episodes releasing every other Wednesday. So it won't be next Wednesday. Maybe the Wednesday after that future episode will release. Assuming all goes well. But for today, wanted to bring back something that I did last year, I believe. This was kind of an experimental thing where we compiled a few outtakes from various past Horror Convos discussions I'd had. We took outtakes from different guests and just uploaded them together so people could hear them for free. The outtakes are normally Patreon exclusive stuff, but I liked the idea of a little generosity, a little sample plate of the goodies you could be getting as a member. Except these kinds of samples, you can't just take and take and take until you've had a full meal's worth, while I now have to make more because of the point of the sample plate being just totally ignored to encourage customers to buy the actual product, you fucking cheapskate. Say, yeah, I don't care how poor you were or if you just got kicked out on the street and your kids were starving because your cheating bitch of an ex screwed you in the divorce. It is common courtesy for people trying to make an honest living. Working retail is shitty enough without you getting me in trouble with management because the store got ripped off.
You know, we're living in a society!
The point is, while I try to get our planned content back on track, I thought we could still entertain you with some extra discussion that didn't make it into the main episodes. This might attract a listener or two to become a member. It was a bit of a challenge choosing what to use for this versus what to save for Patreon, but I enjoyed what I put together. Hopefully you will too. So without further ado, here we go.
Spoiler alert!
I did watch the movie, and I liked it.
Yeah, they've done they did a second one recently. A second attempt at that recently a couple years ago. Welcome to Raccoon City, I believe it was. I just, on one hand, I like the idea of trying to translate Resident Evil into film. I personally think it would work better as a series. These, especially if they did it animated. Oh my god, I would love that. It's because they've done the computer animated movies for years. There's I've seen all of those. There's the most recent one, Death Island, was basically like the Avengers event of that series where you had Jill, Leon, Chris, Claire, and Rebecca all together for the first time. And I remember when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh my god, this is I'm getting chills like I got in RE6 when Chris and Leon were on screen for the first time, because it's as much as these characters all overlap in the work that they do, you'd think they would share screen time more with each other, as opposed to mostly just interacting through sharing files with each other. But obviously from a franchising standpoint, you don't want to have too many characters together in the same game, or I guess in the same movie.
Yeah. Well, I actually, I really liked the Resident Evil movie, that first one.
Mm-hmm.
With Mila Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez.
Is it Mila or Mia? I always get that mixed up.
I thought it was Mila.
See, I thought so too. It's I always get that mixed up with Gal Gadot's name, and I'm pretty sure she herself said in an interview that it's Gadot, not Godot. But it's hard to keep up with that stuff anymore. Can't everyone just have an American name? Just a nice simple
whitewash everybody.
A nice simple
Whitewash
English
everyone.
white Anglo-Saxon white name.
Right.
He said with heavy sarcasm.
Well, I mean, Chinese people already do it for you.
There you go.
Hi, my name's Eddie, and it's really Chung Hee-bin, and
yeah,
that's probably more Korean.
Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, they kept it simple.
Yeah, exactly. Make it easy for the stupid Westerners.
Just ethnic enough to be marketable, but not so much that we have to learn. Or oh my god, Saoirse Ronan. And I remember she was on Stephen Colbert years ago, and she tried to teach him how to pronounce different words. And I think her that whatever native language it is that her name comes from, because first time I saw her name and then I heard the pronunciation, my first instinctive reaction as a prideful American was, oh, you go to hell. That is not how that would be spelled.
Well, I watch I follow a lot of different Instagram people on Facebook and stuff like that, because I'm old and I only watch reels on Facebook. But one of my favorites is that Reed Che, and he spells his last name Choi. So for the longest time I thought it was Choi, until he actually said it on one of his reels, and he's like Che, and I'm like, oh.
So which one's silent in that, the O or the I?
Apparently both. But I digress.
I will say the first 3 Resident Evils I thought were good. I personally separate them into 2 trilogies. There's the first trilogy where they at least tried to follow some semblance of the source material, up through the Raccoon City storyline. I mean, it was decent. But by Afterlife, I was like, oh, this is when everybody just officially stopped giving a shit.
Yeah.
You're going head over heels into this Alice in Wonderland with Zombies reinterpretation that apparently Paul W.S. Anderson thought was so brilliant for some reason. And yeah, you get it. That's why her name's Alice. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't lean more into that as the films went on. Like, at a certain point, just stop trying to adapt the game monsters altogether and just come up with mutants based off of like the Mad Hatter or the
because they can't outdo American McGee.
Exactly. I mean, you already had the Red Queen. She was the AI. I mean, then they introduced the White Queen, and it's like a series of multiple AIs over the later films. And then they introduced cloning with Alice being revealed as, she was a clone this whole time. And it's like, yes, thank you. I've seen The Island. I've seen other stories with that general sort of twist. Like, I kind of had a feeling they were going to go that direction after you introduce like a bazillion Alice clones in the third one. Like, I remember as soon as Extinction came out, at least some people started theorizing that the original was going to be revealed as a clone too. And I actually thought when they did that twist, however they did it, that the original Alice was going to be revealed as like the big bad of the entire series. Like, she orchestrated everything behind Wesker, Umbrella, Professor Isaacs. Like, she was the puppet master. And this whole time, her greatest adversary has been her own clone, who just went in a more moral direction than she did. See, I think that actually would have
been a great story plot.
That could have been a cool end game for the final chapter. Because I mean, I always forget the actor's name. I know him from Resident Evil, then from Game of Thrones. I like the guy who plays Isaacs. I think he's an awesome actor.
Who was he in Game of Thrones?
The guy who had a crush on his Khaleesi. He ended up dying for Daenerys because he was in love with her or something.
Oh,
he was her protector.
The guy that looks like a discount Sean Bean.
I've never heard it put that way, but I guess I can see the resemblance.
I know who you're talking about. I cannot think of his name.
And I'm good with faces, terrible with names. That's always been my problem. But
hi, Melissa.
Hello, pot name's Kettle. If we met, but I like Isaacs. I always thought he was one of the better characters in the films. But by like the second or third time they brought him back as the main bad guy, I'm just like, you were just running out of star power for these movies, weren't you? Like, you had Mila, you had Sean Roberts, I think, is the guy who played Wesker he didn't play him in Extinction. I forget who played him in the first time, but that Sean Roberts is who most people know from Afterlife. He cameoed in Retribution.
Well, remember, Michelle Rodriguez off of the first Resident Evil was actually just coming right off of The Fast and the Furious.
That's true. I always thought that, I mean, the older Resident Evil movies, the first three in particular, definitely have very 2000s energy. So I wonder if maybe part of the reason why it went with the tone it did was because they were trying to capitalize on other more action-heavy movies of that time. Because
I want to say that the early 2000s were actually very competitive for action movies and especially game-related movies too.
Now that you say that, what did we have in the early 2000s besides Resident Evil?
I'd say Silent Hill was not too far after that.
The Resident Evil movie started in 2002. The first Silent Hill movie was 2006. I guess if you want to, you can count the Mario movie from the early 90s.
No. We'll skip that.
There were one.
Hill was 2006.
Yeah, there were one or two others. There's my mom, who's never known anything about Silent Hill, actually liked the movie a little bit. Like, we rented it from Hollywood Video or Blockbuster back when it came out, and today I will say I was much more into it back then. And because I wasn't as knowledgeable and really appreciative of Silent Hill as a series when I was a kid. Because we've said before, I was too scared to play the games.
Side note, and another Game of Thrones, I guess, horror movie connection. The guy who played Jon Snow, I want to say, was in the second Silent Hill movie.
Kit Harington, yeah. He played Silent Hill Revelations, whatever it was, that was basically like some cobbled together attempt, I guess, to adapt Silent Hill 3's story. So they did like, I think, a very loose, like Cliff Notes version of Heather Mason's arc, and they ended up adding Kit Harington in as like a member of the cult who becomes her boyfriend, or he becomes disillusioned with the cult or something. And I swear, you want to talk about a series that should never have even attempted to try being made into film, like complete opposite of Resident Evil. I don't think Silent Hill is something you can ever do complete justice in film.
I definitely don't. I don't see it being as impactful.
Yeah, I mean, even as a live action series or an animated series, I mean, maybe you could get some redeeming value with trying to animate adaptations of it. But even then, like, you'd have to, like, every game would have to have, like, its own season's worth of episodes. Like, like Resident Evil, you could maybe do 10 episodes per game. Silent Hill, I think you need more like 20.
I think the big problem with it is they turn these video games into movies is that, usually with a movie, like, you've got some time to kind of become attached to the character before these things happen to them. You kind of like start experiencing things with them and you're going through it with them. But, like when you take the video game aspect, especially a well-established one like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, and, your audience is expecting to see a certain type of character or a certain type of villain. And they either don't get the villain or they don't get the character. They don't have that immediate connection. And so you're not getting the same like heart pounding, going through it with these characters as you do with the video game.
Well, but part of the problem, I think, comes down to, I mean, one, people are expecting you to translate the tone, like the atmosphere, the general feel of the games into a fundamentally different medium. And I think part of why that's inherently impossible to do complete justice is because a part of what makes the tone and atmosphere in any video game, especially a horror game, so effective is by nature the medium. Like the interactivity inherently plays a contributing factor in why that atmosphere affects you or how it sticks with you, because you feel like you actually have agency in navigating the experience. Like even in linear games or on rails arcade games, things like the House of the Dead, which I've talked about before, it's like the fact that I am not just an observer, that I'm actually affecting to some extent what happens in the world, the virtual world, even if the story and the character's background and the dialogue are all preset. You get into RPGs, you have more flexibility there, but I do think there's by default something lost in the translation when you take the interactivity out of it. That doesn't mean don't try to ever, but I do think you need to go into that, to any project of that nature, accounting for the lack of interactivity, so you can't take full advantage of the gaming medium. Right. So you need to figure out a balance between taking full advantage of the medium of film while at the same time faithfully translating the spirit of the game. So if you can't perfectly translate the atmosphere and the tone, at the very least, you should still try to get close. So, think about all the aspects of it that can still be effective, even if you're limited to the role of an observer, like the sound design, the visual storytelling, the environmental storytelling, the music, especially. Part of why I think the first Silent Hill movie did so well, despite being a complete bastardization of the lore and the story.
They had time to get attached to the characters.
They took time to develop their versions of the characters, even though I would argue several decisions they made with multiple characters were completely unnecessary, but I'll get into that later. But they also used, I think the soundtrack for that movie was entirely music from the games. Like Akira Yamaoka he's one of those people who you basically can't have Silent Hill without, because the tracks that he worked on going all the way back to the first game helped make Silent Hill what it is in terms of its pop cultural identity. It's like John Carpenter's Halloween, First time he showed the movie after it was finished shooting and editing to, I think, a studio executive. I forget who it was. I think it was an executive or a friend of his. And she said it was the most boring thing she'd ever seen, wasn't scary at all. Then he brought it back to her after the score was completed. Polar opposite reaction. And she knew, like, right then, like, when I first heard that story, I'm like, this is how much people take for granted the virtue of music, not just in movies, but especially in video games. Like, some of the best musical compositions ever made are from games, but because gaming to this day still has that stigma by a number of people of, oh, that's just for kids, I'm not into that, then you completely miss so many of these amazing works. And it's especially, the commitment is especially palpable when you consider these artists go in to make these tracks knowing that when you actually play the game, you're probably only going to hear a few seconds to a couple minutes of them alongside all the character and gameplay sound effects, but they do it anyway. And sometimes you're like, dude, you did not have to go this hard with it. Oh my God. It's like it's several songs from the Silent Hill tracks are saved on my personal playlist. My favorite one to this day is You're Not Here, the opening theme to 3, which they played at the end credits of the first movie. And that was the first time I heard that song before I really got into the games. And the first time I heard it, I just remember something about it, the lyrics, the vocals, just the whole vibe of the rhythm. It just still just gets me, man.
Well, some of the scariest movies are simply that scary just because of like the eerie tone of the music, or the score, whatever, happens to be playing in that background. Like, just the mild disturbing music in The Ring, kind of set that tone.
Oh, yeah. The one computer game that I played like multiple times, and I think part of why I could get used to it more easily was because it was a side-scrolling platformer. There was the Hercules PC game. Based off the 1997 Disney film, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. At least one of my favorite animated movies.
I hated that one. But, it's funny because my oldest... Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, why?
Oh, because it was so inaccurate.
Well, of course, it's a freaking Disney movie. Come on.
That didn't stop me from hating it for being inaccurate.
Ariel didn't get her tongue ripped out in The Little Mermaid. She didn't go back into the sea and dissipate into foam.
That is also true. But see, the difference being that I was an adult, or almost an adult, when Hercules came out, and I already had all of that lore that I knew of, like all the reading that I'd done, all the Greek myths.
Maybe that's...
Versus The Little Mermaid, where I was like 10.
That must be why I was more receptive, because like that movie was my introduction to Greek mythology.
Right.
And even after I learned how inaccurate it was, I still had just so much fun with the movies, just like immersing me into that whole world of like the different gods and monsters. Like, you do not understand how much I loved the Hydra. I had so many toys. I drew that thing so many times. It was my favorite boss battle in the old PC game. I was obsessed with that thing. If 3-headed snakes with regenerative heads existed in real life, I would have begged my mom to get me one, and I would have walked it and fed it and loved it. And if it had babies, I would have not sold one of them for adoption because I would have loved them too much to part with one, and I would have named them as soon as they came out of the eggs.
You thought about this a lot.
If you only knew. It was just...
well, it's like I wasn't mad at Cinderella for the stepsisters not getting their eyes pecked out. But, I think it's all like, what you know, how old you are versus,
It's like, even outside the context of Greek mythology, I just love everything about it as a movie. It's just the animation style, the cast, the music, the I always forget what you call the ladies who sing the songs. The muses. And some people criticize it as like, oh, well, they were going off the stereotype of like soulful black
gospel music.
And I'm just like,
I actually really liked them.
I know.
That was one thing I did like.
I hear that criticism of like, oh, Hercules is racist somehow because of that. And I'm just like, dude, shut up and listen to the hot animated ladies sing. And it's just, just enjoy the movie. Stop making everything have to be problematic for some reason. Everything does not have to be perfectly politically correct with real life. Can't you just have fun? Just enjoy life, enjoy the experience of cinema. Yeah, but
Well, and I will say, one thing that me and my daughter both loved about that movie was Meg's song.
and I love Megra so much. Like to this day, she's not technically a princess, but she is one of my favorite Disney female leads.
Well, like anytime I would make like a Disney CD for my kids, like that was always on the request list, and me and Autumn had to sing that every single time.
And that's exactly me with the Lion King soundtrack. Just my parents hated Hakuna Matata after the number of times I made them play it back for me.
Can You Feel the Love Tonight is just so overplayed at this point in my head.
Yeah, pretty much like Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On.
Yeah.
No hate, no shade to Celine Dion. She seems like an awesome person, and I feel so bad for the personal tragedies she's gone through. Ooh, and nothing against her personally whatsoever. I am just so fucking sick of My Heart Will Go On. Yeah. And I got sick of it like decades ago. Ooh, oh God, I'm older.
Yes, you can now talk in decades.
We should do a commentary on Cabin in the Woods too. We can like react to it as we watch it sometime. Like I want to do horror film commentaries, like put them up on Patreon. It's just a matter of getting people over to record for a full movie's worth of runtime.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. I would love to rewatch Cabin in the Woods.
It's
although I'm going to laugh my ass off.
Please, like the whole point of commentaries is that the more you talk over them, the easier they are to get through copyright.
But the part that like cracks me up every time is oh God, what's the guy who plays Thor?
Chris Hemsworth?
Yes. He gives that long, big speech
exactly
about how he's going to save them and it's going to be great. And he like rides off on his motorcycle and he goes,
and he's out of here.
And like, it cracks me up every time.
And they gave it away in the fucking trailer. Why would
I never saw the trailer,
that?
So it didn't ruin it for me.
Just stop doing that with trailers. You can advertise a movie without giving away the best parts. God, I will never forgive Terminator Genesis for that. Like, you had a great plot twist with John himself being revealed as the new bad guy Terminator. Or like Skynet took him over and then brought him back from the future to become like the new big bad.
So which actor is playing him now?
And I stopped keeping track after. I think it's the guy who plays Dr. Creed in the Pet Cemetery, the 2019 one, not the 89 one. And I always forget his name. I've seen him in a few things. He's a decent actor, but he also plays the main guy in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I have not watched a lot of the remakes. I just can't. So, quick side note.
Uh-huh.
So, Joss Whedon wrote, I don't know if he wrote. I know he wrote and directed Firefly. I believe he wrote and directed Angel and Buffy, and also Dollhouse. If you weren't aware. But he also directed Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when Joss Whedon's name being on something was actually a good thing. Like, people wanted him. But I feel kind of bad for the guy, but I mean, to be fair, like a number of projects that he helmed kind of... I might be confusing him with someone else. Did they bring him in to do
Justice League,
the theatrical cut of Justice League?
I am unsure at what point they brought him in. I know that they did bring him in, but I don't know if anything could have saved it. So
all I know is like I apologize if I'm mixing him up with someone else. All I know is that the Snyder cut was not much of an improvement in my opinion, and no movie needs to be 4 hours long. I'm sorry. Like, same criticism of the Lord of the Rings movies. Like, I love Return of the King. I know they had to cut a lot of stuff out from the books, even considering the runtime. I should not have to spend 12 hours straight to watch a trilogy. I just shouldn't.
I will tell you, like, when I was like a much younger person, I picked up the uncut version of Lord of the Rings, the original one.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I don't like. I know that there was more stuff. I just don't know that it was really necessary stuff. Like
I own the extended editions of the trilogy now.
I don't remember them being so necessary that like I could have done without that extra time in my life.
Yeah, well, I think it was mostly an excuse for them to either do more environmental stuff as far as the effects and the sets. Like, I think they got to play around more with the world that the version of Middle Earth that Peter Jackson and his crew created. And then they also tried to work in a little more stuff, or at least abridged versions of stuff that they had to leave out of the theatrical cuts from the books. Like, I think in the extended editions, you get at least a brief scene covering Saruman's death, like actually seeing Christopher Lee's character die. I haven't watched those movies in so long. I haven't worked up the patience yet to sit down and watch through all the extended editions. I have to like be in the right mental state for it.
No, it's a whole expedition.
And it really is. I mean, fantastic trilogy. It transformed New Zealand's entire economy. If I'm remembering that right, I think it was
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
It was New Zealand.
So I mean, that's no small feat.
Well, considering how far away they are from the U.S., like it's just. Mm-hmm. I want to say that John Panette did a comedy or a commentary about flying to New Zealand. He said, I don't know if New Zealand's beautiful. I'm pretty sure a penguin's asshole would look beautiful after that many hours on a flight.
Game over.
I'm just like, but this is kind of another topic, like for another day. But in my own personal beliefs, I think that it's possible some dinosaurs could have survived extinction and made it to the present day, which could explain some sightings within the cryptozoological world, like Nessie and Loch Ness and Ogopogo and Lake Okanagan in British Columbia and Canada. But that's a whole different topic. But I think, in my opinion, it's possible because, I mean, there's a lot of the world that is still remote, that humanity has not penetrated yet. The world's oceans are so vast. I mean, I think it's possible that there's some that survived extinction.
I believed that for years, that like when we first started learning about the Loch Ness Monster and like cryptozoology and stuff growing up, I subscribed to the theory for like several years that Nessie was, I bought into the plesiosaur theory, or more specifically, I bought into the theory that Nessie was a surviving descendant, like a direct descendant or an offshoot of the plesiosaur species, that somehow it got into that part of the world, whatever the waterway was before it became the Loch Ness as we know it. Like maybe it started in the ocean, because as far as, if I remember right, my geography is terrible, but I'm pretty sure Loch Ness connects to the ocean, or at least it did at some point. But I bought into that whole theory that, at some point, a species of plesiosaur or plesiosaur descendant, offshoot, whatever, just got geographically isolated in that waterway as the tectonic movements were like changing the continents and stuff, and it must have got landlocked in somewhere along the line, or for whatever reason, maybe it broke off from its herd. I don't know how that species migrates or if they're herd animals or not, but for whatever reason, it just ended up staying in that general area, and it was somehow able to reproduce just enough. Eventually that reproduction would turn incestuous. I don't know how that would have affected its genetics, but anyway, fast forward, however many million years later, and the Nessie we got was some kind of, there was no way it could be just one. Like, I always believed that if the sightings were real, then what we were seeing in photographs and videos of what people claimed was like an animal surfacing in the water briefly, if it was real, there had to be more than one. At the very least, there had to be enough of them that these sightings could take place at so many different ranges of like the Loch Ness is a long waterway. Like, if it was just one of them, there's no way you'd get that many sightings, especially over like thousands of years, because like Nessie sightings went all the way back to like the Viking days.
Bingo. Dino DNA.
As for my opinion today, I don't know enough to say it's impossible, well, I haven't seen any proof either way. Yeah, but if there is any truth to it, I'd imagine that most of the Nessies are either dead at this point due to human activity or environmental interference. However we've impacted the environment, that probably would have killed off most of them. They probably wouldn't have enough food left in their habitat. I don't know what kind of fish exist in the loch, but never say never. It's like we discovered a species of fish, I think, in one of those lakes. I don't know if it was Loch Ness or somewhere else, but it was a species we believed had been extinct for like 800 million years, I think. And then all of a sudden some fisherman just grabbed it and got a photo of it. So, new species and species we thought were extinct, we get new data on that all the time. Like every year I can't count the number of notifications I've had on my phone this year alone saying, hey, new species discovered on this or that. I'll look at the articles, and it's at a certain point, it's just I started ignoring them because it's like you're giving me one of these like every other day, dude.
Kind of going back to the film Dinosaur really quick. That scene towards the end where the herd, like Aladar, I guess, takes the lead to distract the Carnotaurus so the herd can escape, right, in that canyon bit. One of the things I was one of the things I didn't really understand, I guess, from my perspective, since I'm not a nature expert, but it kind of makes sense, is, okay, you got this Carnotaurus. It's much bigger, stronger than these other dinosaurs. Yeah, he's outnumbered, but couldn't he have just hypothetically have just charged directly into the herd? Like he could have just made a move for it. But I guess if I think about it from a natural perspective, even though you're like a predator, right, in nature, you still have the risk of, if you get into fights or engagements, of getting injured or worse. So maybe that's the reasoning why they didn't take that move to just charge right into the herd. But I'm just curious what you think about that.
If I had to guess, like, its instincts were just telling it, I could take out dozens of these dinos in the herd, but eventually I'm going to get overwhelmed. It's like, but predators most of the time instinctively know when they're beat, or they know when to, go for I don't want to say a tactical retreat, but they just, like, even a wolf, when the odds are stacked up enough against it'll instinctively know to back off. It's like very few predators that I know of besides humans are so irrationally stubborn that they would knowingly basically seal their own death warrants, and all just for the sake of, like, if it was starving and it was hungry enough, like desperately hungry enough, maybe, because I heard stories of like I don't know if you heard that story of a shark that like latched onto a boy's leg, like swallowed its leg halfway down its gullet. I forget what species it was. This was in a book about sharks that I read like 100 times growing up, and it talked about different stories. It mentions like the Jersey attacks that inspired Jaws with the bull shark, or 1919 or whenever it was that it happened. But there was this one story where big size shark latches onto this boy. They had to pull the boy onto the beach before the shark let go of him. Like he just did not want to let go. And they got a good look at it when they finally pry the thing off of him. If I remember the story right, the boy didn't lose his leg. He could have, but like if even one of those teeth had cut the right artery, like if it had bitten him high enough to even start to dig into the femoral artery, he most likely would have bled to death before they got him onto the beach. Wherever he was bitten, he was very lucky. But they look at the shark's underbelly and see a whole bunch of wounds on it, so they determined that whatever happened, the shark was just unable to catch its regular food. And if this is a direct quote as I remember it from the book, they said scientists determined that the shark was so hungry that it took unusual risks. So if you apply that to the Carnotaurus, then I guess maybe it might have been more suicidally persistent. But if I remember right, at that point in the story, that one was already injured, because I think they had a fight with it earlier in the cave, didn't they? When Brutus sacrifices himself so Aladar's family can escape. But yeah, he was already heavily wounded, and then he thought he was going to die. They try to help him. He starts to warm up to them, and then he ends up making like the noble sacrifice play so they can get out. But I think one of the Carnotaurs in that fight, I believe, got killed. So the surviving one that threatened the herd later in the third act, his leg was already injured. So it makes sense that he wouldn't, pick a fight with the whole herd at that point. But he was persistent enough to keep going after the ones that were left behind, and in the final battle, and up into the canyon, going after like Crone, and him and Aladar having to kind of work together to stop it. It's been so many years since I've seen that movie. I still have it on DVD, but I think as story wise, that makes sense.
Let's say on that note, Keith, do you remember this? This was a short-lived miniseries, Dinotopia. I remember I saw that. I don't know if you ever saw that. It came out in 2002. It was like only one season, basically about people who crash land on a remote island inhabited both by people and dinosaurs. Maybe the producers of that show were on board with those Jurassic Park ideas. Yeah, Dinotopia. I remember I saw it when it came out. It was a long time ago, but
is this animated also?
No, it was a live action series.
Okay, now
produced by ABC. I don't know if you ever saw it, but I remember it because I did see it.
Yeah. What wasn't there a cartoon also? About cyborg dinosaurs or something? It was something in the vein of it was sort of like He-Man.
Oh yeah. There's another one, Dinotopia, cartoon series too.
It's not Zoids.
I don't know.
It's I was obsessed with Zoids as a kid. Like when that premiered on Toonami, I watched Zero Century and Chaotic Century. Chaotic Century is better in my opinion story wise, but Zero Century what was the name of the main one? Liger Zero. Oh my god, I had so many toys of that I built as a kid.
Oh man, but I was gonna say really quick, despite all these properties with dinosaurs, right? I think what Michael Crichton did and what Spielberg helped him to do by doing the films, he helped to popularize dinosaurs for the world, a worldwide audience. I think that's what Michael Crichton did with his books. Yeah, and that's why I think it's endured to this day that it's more iconic than other dinosaur properties, because I think that's how much of an influence Crichton had.
And the movie did for paleontologists what Jaws did for marine biologists and oceanographers. Tons of people, myself included at one point, got interested in studying dinosaurs because of that movie. I can't remember the name of it, but I swear there was a cartoon that was popular in the 80s or something. It wasn't Transformers Beast Wars. That was different. This was something the dinosaurs had armor and weapons or something, and you had humans living in the prehistoric era. I guess they time traveled back there or something, and they used the dinos to fight the bad guys or something. There was a whole bunch of there was a bunch of kids' properties involving using dinosaurs as weapons. When I was growing up, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was my favorite one. But I mean, even before that, you had Voltron. I forget if Voltron ever had a dinosaur thing. I think the robots could turn into dinosaur shapes.
I think you're thinking of
Power Rangers swords.
I think you're thinking of Dino Riders. That was that series.
Dino Riders, yes,
came out. Yeah.
Oh god! To talk about a memory that you didn't know was living rent free in your brain. Oh my god! That show was such a fever dream. Wasn't there a family sitcom that they did at one point about a family of dinosaurs? It's they had these creepy ass animatronics or puppets or something.
Oh yeah. It was called Dinosaurs. Looked like something out of Jim Henson's Nightmare Vault.
Yes,
that's the series.
Yes, oh my god.
I think so.
I saw a little bit of that series.
Oh my
when I was
gosh,
real
it looks
little.
like Jim
I always
Henson.
thought those things look creepy. Yeah, it was supposed to be a family-friendly,
Harry and the Hendersons.
Harry and the Hendersons. I remember every time I saw that show as when I was little, I was just like, what in the world are these supposed to be? Like that? These don't
You're
look
like,
like
what the-
dinosaurs or humans. They look like the hybrids that some idiot, whatever the guy was who was considering that idea for Jurassic Park 4, or we had an example of what that might have looked like. If just take the hybrids and try and make a sitcom out of them. The biggest payoff, the one thing I will say I loved about Jurassic World, I just hate that it took them so long to do it. Like, they should have done this back in Jurassic Park 3, and it would have been such a perfect cap off to that relationship. If I wrote a whole like fan fiction about this years ago. It's like how I would have written Jurassic Park 3. Because that's how invested I was in this. The one thing I loved about Dominion, apart from seeing the original cast, almost all of them back together again, and like they had to get that group shot of them towards the end, even with Henry Wu in there, and it's like, yeah, we're all lined up. Get that wide shot, the superhero shot of like
Kumbaya
all the main
shot.
players together. But yeah, before the Avengers assemble shot. It's yeah, but
oh my god,
they got Alan and Ellie back together. So someone, thank God, realized the horrible mistake Henry Wu was talking about in the trailer. We need to correct our horrible mistake. We need to get Ellie and Alan back together.
They needed to bring in Julianne Moore's character Sarah back in. I don't know why they didn't, because I thought she would have been with Ian Malcolm's character. Like, Julianne Moore should have came back.
I just assumed that she was the wife staying at home in this one, and like she just didn't.
Maybe
come
it's
along
a canon explanation.
Yeah, it's like Malcolm comes home after all the shit he went through today, and she'll just be there in the kitchen making dinner, or with him and his daughter, just like hanging out. He just decided not to involve them.
End credit scene.
It's like in my personal headcanon. He and Sarah and whatever the daughter's name was, they're still together. And he just had the bad luck of being away at the office when all this shit started. It's like the Fast and Furious movies, all the excuses they keep coming up with for Paul Walker not to come back. They'll let his wife come back, let her do all the death-defying stunts this time, but he stays home with the kid because we couldn't just end that franchise with Furious 7. And so now we got to have Jordana Brewster come back, but it's but Brian will let the mother, Brian O'Connor will let the mother of his child go on these death-defying missions alongside the crew. Meanwhile, he's staying at home, just like with cleaning up baby puke and changing diapers. We really believe that Brian O'Connor would do that. I mean, I get it. Like, they can't keep CGIing Paul Walker back from the dead, but at the same time, you could have avoided all of that if you just ended the series at 7. It's like, of all the franchises that did not need to go on for 10, 11 movies, like Fast and Furious was past its peak by the 5th one.
Really quick on that note, about franchises that need to know an ending. Okay, so I hope the people who are supposedly thinking about making a Halloween TV series reconsider that, because look at what happened with Chucky. They canceled it after 3 seasons. And from my understanding, they're taking a gamble there because, like, okay, you think that Michael Myers is going to work with a TV series, and then plus, I don't think that they're going to go based by David Gordon Green's trilogy for this planned series, if they greenlight that TV series at all. So they're taking a lot of risks right now, because I mean, the biggest risk for me is, okay, look what happened to Chucky. They gave him the axe literally after 3 seasons, and you're seriously going to try to go with Michael Myers TV series, a Halloween TV series? You're taking a big risk right there. I mean, come on, and I don't think that's a good idea.
It's their
I don't
money.
think it is. I mean, supposedly they're still working on a Friday the 13th. Yeah, Friday the 13th series too, supposedly in development. But no, like, when does it? I love how you said it, that Jurassic Park doesn't care anymore. What the?
They
ruined it, right?
It's like I said. Only thing I unironically liked about Dominion was that canonically Ellie and Alan are finally together again, like they should have been. They never should have broken up in the first place. That's what I would have changed in my fan fiction version of 3. is they would have been
Right.
together. That little boy would have been their
Right.
son. And
Yeah.
part of the whole story, the reason for him trying to fight like hell to get off the island is so he can get back to his family. Because, and that shows you get a sense of how Alan has changed since the first film. Like, he'd have family pictures in his wallet. He'd run into the kid that, Tia Leone, William H. Macy, their son that they've been looking for, who got trapped on the island. And, at first, we see Alan's kind of apathetic to their cause. Like, they had to trick him onto the island because he wasn't willing to go back into that hell even to save someone else's kid.
I know.
But I'm going to email you, if I can find it, what I wrote, my fan fiction for what I would have done with that story. Some of it I probably would change now. I mean, it was years ago. I was never writing it like it was a professional script. It was just something I was writing for fun. But I'll send that to you, and you can tell me what you think of the choices I would have made back then for how I would have changed it. But that would have been the big thing, is there's no no name. I don't even remember his name. That's how irrelevant he was. Is a new boyfriend for Ellie. That
Oh,
she
yeah,
had a
that
kid
guy was
with.
part of the State Department.
Yeah,
convenience.
It's yeah. It did the crux of that movie regarding Alan's character is he's focused on getting back to Ellie and his kid. Somehow she calls in favors to get them the military people to the island to help them escape. And the big payoff of that movie would be sort of an homage to the original movie's ending, with Alan like holding Lex and Timmy and seeing how like he's open to being a parent now. The third film would have ended in kind of a poetic callback to that, with, he gets back home at the very end. You got the triumphant music playing. It's like you could cross it over with the footage of them escaping on the helicopter again, and this would cut to a scene like further forward in time after he gets back to the U.S., and you just cut it together with footage of, him coming back home. Ellie's all teary-eyed. His little son runs up to him, and he, like, picks him up in his arms. And you see that, like, this is Alan's happily ever after. And you really get a sense of how much he's grown since the first movie and how he earned this. But in the end, he did, decide to be the good guy, even though most of the story was him trying to get back to his own family. And to his credit, he helped bring the other family, William H. Macy, Tia Leone, and their son back together in the end, too. So he did, quote unquote, the right thing, the noble thing, but he gets to have his cake and eat it, too, in that both the families get to live happily ever after. So I just think that would have been just a perfect way to top off that trilogy as far as the human characters go. Personally, in terms of Spinosaurus beating out the T-Rex, what I wish they would have done, and I don't remember if I wrote this in my fan fiction of what I would have done with Jurassic Park 3, I would have had it go like this. So we saw T-Rex parents in The Lost World, right? They were going after their cub that ended up being brought to San Diego because the new Hammond, the Poindexter, whose name I don't even remember, he wanted to steal
his
the infant
nephew
for himself.
Ludlow.
That dude.
Peter Ludlow.
But
John Hammond's ungrateful nephew.
Yet another character who's so forgetful that I never remember his name. But I mean, to Vincent D'Onofrio's credit, he was a more memorable villain than that guy. But as far as what I would have done with Jurassic Park 3, I would have taken a page from the T-Rex mates from The Lost World and done another pair of mates in 3. And I would have done it like this. I would have written it so the T-Rexes on this island, there's only 2 of them left. There used to be more of them, but they all got killed off by Spinosaurus. This thing was like... It dominated the entire island, at least all the territory on the island that it occupied. There was only one of it, but it was so overpowered, like so much stronger and more durable than all the other carnivores on the island, that even the T-Rexes couldn't stand up to it. So just one after another, it's just picking off all the T-Rexes because it doesn't want any challengers to compete with its dominance of its territory. It's the big bad, the big bully. And these last two T-Rexes, Spinosaurus would have, in the first fight where it kills the T-Rex, that T-Rex would have turned out to be the father, the male, and it ends up killing the father and then finding the T-Rex nest, like their eggs. These were the last eggs they had left, and it stomps over the nest. I guess maybe it eats the eggs or something, just to establish what a bastard the Spinosaurus is. So at this point, the only T-Rex left on the entire island is the female, the mate to the one that just got killed, and that she would be distraught. She's vengeful, and she finally decides, you know what? I'm going after this thing, and I'm going to die trying to take a bite out of it. So that would establish a subplot for another dinosaur chasing after the Spinosaurus, which is chasing after Alan's group. So this adds to the threat level of them encountering both the T-Rex and the Spinosaurus and the group of raptors chasing after them, because Alan would find out his friend stole the egg. So it's just, you want to make it like a whole group of dinos on their asses, just hounding the humans at every turn. And right when the heroes seem cornered at the very end, when Spinosaurus would come back after the riverboat scene, and you think, oh my god, it's finally going to get them, there's nothing that can stop it. And then the female T-Rex comes in, and she's tougher than the male. She has battle scars. It's implied that she fought Spinosaurus before, so she has more experience. And the Spinosaurus would already be heavily wounded at this point from the injuries it sustained earlier in the movie, from the scene on the river, maybe other fight scenes. It gets progressively wounded as the movie goes on, but it's like a Terminator. It just won't stop coming after them. So the big finale of the movie would be the T-Rex rematch, with the female finally getting her revenge for her mate and her eggs being killed, and she kills the Spinosaurus, chews its head off or something. So the humans stay out of it. They're not a part of it. She's not after them. They thought she was, but she's not. And so they get out of there. They're on the chopper back home, and I guess that would be part of the ending, is that everyone goes home to their families happily ever after, and the female T-Rex is the new alpha of the island now, and you get to see kind of an homage to the first film's ending with, Rexy given that triumphant roar, and they do that again with the end of Jurassic World. So this would have been that, but for Jurassic Park 3, and that's how Spinosaurus would have been defeated. I think that would have been a good idea, and it would have made it so, even though Spinosaurus was established to be more dangerous than the T-Rex, this Rexy still gets a win, and so the iconography of the T-Rex is preserved in that sense.
If I happen to look like a potato or my internet gives out, I apologize. I live near Ashland, and our internet is notoriously horrible.
It's totally fine. I live in Mechanicsville. So I was surprised when you said you're in Virginia as well. Especially Ashland. I had another horror podcaster on recently, Caitlin Grant from Plug It Up. I don't know if Alfonso mentioned her or not. But I've had her on before, and I've been on her show as well. And she and her friend Maddie, I forget which one is her co-host. I keep mixing them up, but it's I met them actually doing a local event, a horror trivia night at Strange Ways Brewing, back when that was going on at that location. They've changed locations since then. This was right around when I was first starting horror convos. I didn't have a card or merchandise to sell. I just now got the card from a local logo and apparel shop. Literally just I think the day before yesterday, I walked into this place for the first time. They just moved. And I figure, if I'm ever going to try to sell merchandise based off of my podcast, I guess this would be the place to do it. So I got their card and introduced myself to the owners. What I found, though, is from an economic standpoint, like, content creators generally don't make a lot of money doing this to begin with. Like, you either have to be extremely good or extremely lucky.
Yeah.
And I've really been learning how to play the system as far as YouTube goes. Like, I've pretty much been swimming against the current so far with how I've been trying to do this. So I'm just kind of learning as I go, learning how to follow the algorithm, what kind of trends people might be interested in. And I try to have as many guests on from other horror podcasts as I can, because my long-term goal for Horror Convos is to make this into a sort of interconnected podcasting community, a podcast universe, if you will, for all you kids who love to compare everything to the MCU. And I really do want to turn it into like this network where we can talk to each other, collaborate with each other, help boost each other's shows by getting the word out through, not just through our social media, but through just coming onto each other's shows and really helping each podcast's unique identity to solidify itself, while ideally, spreading interest in others. I've done that for Plug It Up. I hope to do that for VHS Doom as well, because I really do believe that, we all will increase our odds of being successful in this already very crowded, competitive market. Yeah. When we stop all going like lone wolves, like this is still the Wild West, and really start trying to work together more. Because on top of boosting interest in our individual shows, we can really reach out to all horror lovers out there, the extroverts and the introverts. I'm the latter generally, and just really teach everyone that horror fans are not, this shady, group of freaks, creeps, and geeks. We can definitely dabble in those on a given day, but it really just is a community of people like anyone else. And we're all just looking to, share in something that we're passionate about and really find a platform to just, talk about it publicly with people, encourage people to engage in dialogue with us about it, and just teach people horror doesn't have to always be morbid or depressing or perverse. It can be a way for us to just get together and have fun.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I think
I really do hope to grow that as ideally as my podcast gets more recognition over time.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful goal to have. You're right. Horror. Everyone that I've met in horror thus far, and I'm sure there are people who are on the outside of this, but have been super nice and super accommodating, very kind. I went out to North Carolina to do an on-set cinema event, which is put on by Myers House NC. They do like a guy built a whole replica of the Myers house up there, but he does events on set, and he plays movies and then does tours. And we were in North Carolina for the Mutilator / Mutilator 2. And there were so many nice people there that we got to connect with. And this guy even said, like, while we were doing our tour, because he's talking about, oh yeah, this girl got killed here. She got strung up, turned upside down, gutted, whatever. And there are all of these like regular people walking along the beach who are like, what? Which is so funny. The content is so dark and the people are so kind. So, yeah. But I love that. That's a great mission. It's a great mission.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting juxtaposition when you think about it. It's like when, in my anecdotal experience, when most people imagine horror fans, as you said, they jump straight to the most extreme examples, thinking we're all, dressing like, God, I always forget his name. The guy who did that rock song, the beautiful people, the beautiful people.
That's not who did the beautiful people?
Marilyn Manson.
Oh, Marilyn Manson. That's right. Yeah. I was like, Rob Zombie? No, it's not Rob Zombie.
Oh no! Now you're thinking of Dragula. That one's on my personal Halloween party playlist. I have very mixed opinions on Rob Zombie as a filmmaker, but that dude can make music like nobody's business. Just for when it comes to the horror scene. But yeah, it's a very interesting sort of paradox when it comes to this community. I love to say horror fans are like serial killers. We look so normal that you'd never guess what most of us are actually into.
It's true. It's very true. Yeah.
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
No, I remember when my MySpace page had music, I had like, coded music into it, and you had your top 8 or top 12 or whatever it was. And then that all died off. That was a lot of fun. Facebook was kind of boring, but I got on the train anyway.
Yeah, I never use social media all that much to begin with. It's like I interact with YouTube and Reddit more than anything else. And even Reddit, it's like I mostly just go on for fun now. Facebook, I typically, I did mainly just to keep up with people's birthdays or things like that. But now I guess it's just like the future is now, old man. And it's like, just all of a sudden I woke up one day and apparently the fad had passed. And I'm just like, oh, okay, that's news to me. And now I'm just starting to learn about Instagram and Twitter. I refuse to call it X. That sounds like the name of a porno site to me.
Yeah, don't don't call it X.
I've barely dipped my toe into TikTok, but it's just I'm really trying to get used to appealing to this new generation that apparently don't have the attention span for anything longer than a minute. And I just started doing planning out these like shorts that I'm going to do, like
nice.
how to survive, insert horror character here. Or it's like the first one I'm going to be releasing soon is like how to survive Jaws. And it's literally just like maybe 60 seconds worth of like, let's say 10 different tips that just go by at a rapid pace. And I'm learning how to use like AI video generators. Like I just started learning LTX. Okay. To make each one have a bit of a video reference so you can see how the tip plays out. And I'm going to look into like an AI voice to narrate. So I very much am like that grandpa coal miner or being told to learn how to code.
Right.
It's a whole new world I'm entering.
Well, that's good on you. Honestly, I feel like I don't have the mental energy to learn the algorithms, like what makes things grow. I don't know. I make what I like, and I'm like, you know what? I like this. And sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't, but I just can't. I feel like if you get good at that, you can do that, right? Like if that's your, in like my personal life in business that I've worked in, we've brought in these like social media engagement managers, and the way that they schedule their postings and how they make their posts, it's like so scientific, and it's just beyond me. I like doing this because I like all this old shit, I like all these tapes and stuff. So it's hard for me to get to put my mind in a space where I'm like, okay, let me make this video and cater to the algorithm. Like, but good on you. Good on you. If you figure that all out, let me know.
Yeah. If I'm understanding this right,
Sure.
I don't know anything about the technology that goes into filmmaking for the most part, as far as like different models of cameras, software and such. It's sure. Like I wrote, produced, and directed a couple short films when I was in college. It was not my camera. It was always someone else's, and we had someone else working setting up the lighting and my mom's a photographer, and in college we had someone else who was in charge of being the cameraman. And so it's like most of this stuff is like rocket science to me, or I walk into an auto garage and you trying to explain to me what a solenoid is. And I actually almost took an auto shop class when I was in high school, until I walked into the actual garage. This was at Virginia Tech, I think, at the time. They had a lot of extracurricular classes you could take, like radio journalism, auto shop, lots of stuff that wouldn't come standard in school. Some things I think should be standard. I think all kids should be required to learn at least for a semester.
I'm frozen.
And it's like I walk in. I was so excited to learn about cars. I'm thinking, I won't ever have to get a mechanic. I can learn to do all this for myself. And granted, some things I have learned, until I walked into the actual auto shop. I see all these half taken apart cars, and that's when it hits me like, what the fuck am I doing here? I don't even know where to begin. What look at this thing. Isn't it neat? I don't know shit what this is called. It's like I felt like Ariel without the enthusiasm to collect shit and learn about it, because I'm just like, I'm a stranger in a strange land. I'm a freshwater fish in a big ocean right now, and it just completely terrified me away, and I never went back.
Skill issue.
And it goes into all this detail about how they did the different effects for that miniseries and how much more they had planned for the animatronic spider that ended up, not translating into the final product. It's like, again, people make so much fun of, talk so much shit about that stop motion spider. They had so much more that they wanted to do with that miniseries, and a lot of it was just due, unfortunately, to the network screwing them over, because it back then, by their standards at the time, it was just too much of a risk. It was too scary. It looked too dark for a made-for-TV miniseries, and they were too concerned about the optics of it. So you want to know why so much of that miniseries looks so schlocky, and really it really went beyond its resources for all these crazy ideas they were trying to do for the effects and Pennywise's transformations and all that stuff. But blame ABC, essentially. I think that's the network that it originally premiered on. ABC just really cut the knees out from under them when it came to how limited they got compared to what they initially planned, and all the time and money and work hours and really just incredible puppeteering and makeup expertise that they had some really talented people working on the production of this thing, but so much of their work unfortunately just ended up on the cutting room floor.
That's sad.
All right. Let me ask you real quick. We're trying to get Horror Convos put up on Apple Podcasts. We had trouble with the Apple ID being approved for some reason. It's like this was like some months ago, sometime last year, I think. It's been on the back burner since then. But for some reason, it just... I looked up a tutorial on YouTube and read, how to submit a podcast to insert, site here, what the process for Apple Podcasts was to go through. It's just been stubborn with us for some reason. Have you heard of anyone having trouble like that?
No, I personally haven't. Are you using like an Apple ID you created for your show, or your personal Apple ID? Because I used my personal and I didn't have any issues getting it uploaded.
I believe it was an Apple ID created for the show. I honestly don't remember. I'd have to go back and see if it's even still usable. I might end up having to make a new one, but I think I tried to create an Apple ID for the show, and I think it gave me trouble. Now that you're saying that, it's been, like I said, like a year and change. I think it gave me a little trouble. So I think I ended up using my personal Apple ID, which they allowed it because I was like a regular user. It wasn't like a new account just for the show. So that might be the issue. They might be an activity thing. I don't know. But that's, I'm not 100% sure there. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many stories and ideas some would consider to be better left unprinted. Better left
non-canonical.
Better left fan fiction. Yeah, and I'm not knocking fan fiction. Like I've read fan fictions related to so many different properties that, in my opinion, are like significantly better than what we get in official media these days. It's like I am not one of those elitists at all looking down my nose at fan fiction. And because really everything is a fan fiction until it becomes canon. And I mean, half the stuff being done with so many legacy franchises these days is basically just canonized fan fiction. And so it's like, to me, that there's not really a strict line between those two things to begin with. To me, the only major difference between canon and fan fiction is which one gets the green light from Hollywood and gets the money thrown at it. It's in terms of quality control, in my opinion, the two are pretty much interchangeable in terms of how easily one can shift between the other. or I've never seen them as two different realms in terms of which one is more likely to produce quality stuff. If there was a time when I would have considered the official stuff to generally be more likely to produce gems, but the older I get, the more I start to see gems more often in the stuff that doesn't get canonized compared to the stuff that does. As I've just lost so much faith in the industry from a quality control standpoint, and the Resident Evil films really are, to get back on topic, perhaps a prime example of why I lost my faith in the institution of Hollywood. At least from a standpoint of creative skill and competence versus just greed and creative bankruptcy and just bureaucratic nonsense. And so, the Hollywood system in general, it's the institution of film itself could be a perfect parallel for the kind of corruption and corporate crap that goes on in Resident Evil with Umbrella and all of its equivalents.
That's all you get for free.
And that is it for this episode of Horror Convos Outtake Samples. Comment below, do you agree or disagree with any of our takes? Do you want more outtake samples in the future? Just to give you a taste of the extra stuff you could be listening to on Patreon. Don't be shy with those opinions. Remember, this is more than a podcast. It is a dialogue between horror lovers. Here is your regular reminder that Horror Convos is available to listen to on YouTube, Spreaker, and Spotify. If you'd like to be a guest, remember to email KeithHorrorConvos, all one word, all lowercase, at yahoo.com. New episodes release every other Wednesday. So please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss when our newest content is uploaded. We should have the next main episode ready to release soon. And again, hopefully we get back on schedule. Until we talk again, good night and be well.